On Larry King Now, David Hyde Pierce, a candid conversation with the Emmy and Tony-winning actor and director.
It just seems more important to let people live their lives. It seems, in a way, more American. As someone who is taking care of that person, you're confronted with, annoyances, the same question over and over.
Plus, biggest misconception people have about you.
That I'm George Clooney.
All next on Larry King Now. Welcome to another Larry King Now in New York at the Paramount Hotel with the Emmy and Tony-winning actor and director David Hyde Pierce. He's best known for playing Dr. Niles Crane in the great hit show Frasier. After the show ended, he returned to theater, most recently in the award-winning comedy Vanya and Sonia and Masha and Spike. This spring, he will direct It Should Have Been You on Broadway. And he will also be appearing in the critically acclaimed show The Good Wife, which airs Sundays at 9 p.m., 8 Central on CBS. What took you to The Good Wife?
They asked. I had
Blaine's on that show.
Oh, well, that's part of what took me to The Good Wife. I've always chosen my projects based on the quality of the writing and who I would get to work with. That's what I did with Frasier. And this show has such great writing. It's a lot of good writing on television nowadays, actually. It seems to be sort of a golden age of television. But this show is particularly well written, and I have so many friends in it. Nathan's in it. It's a lot of New York actors because it shoots here. Nathan Lane, Christine Baranski, Alan Cumming. These are all people I've worked with over the years. And Juliana Margulies, who's the star, who I hadn't worked with, but I so admire. And so all of that made it really appealing.
Why does that show? Do you watch it a lot?
You know what? I haven't watched a lot of anything. And when they were talking to me about the show, they sent me 3 episodes from last season, which I watched. And that immediately decided me, because I knew my pals were doing the show, but I was so taken with the writing. And then what I've done since then is I've been going through all the seasons, not watching every episode, but kind of skipping through, watching random episodes. Every time I have a friend on, I watch that one. And I've just been amazed.
It works.
It's a great, and it's a smart, surprising show with really good music.
Now, I hate to say something personal. You play a cable news legal commentator?
I do. I'm modeling my performance after you.
I'm honored.
Yeah. Yep.
And how do you come into the script? In what case? How are you brought in?
Basically, the show takes place in Chicago, and so I'm a local kind of legal expert. I've been a Supreme Court clerk. I'm an author. Kind of a well-liked. There's a guy on CNN, Jeffrey Toobin.
Yes.
Who, Jeffrey.
Friend.
So kind of that sort of person, very affable and with a very wide following. And there's Alicia, Juliana's character, is considering whether or not to run for office for state's attorney. And so I think because I have such a wide audience, I think she's going to be talking to me about that and seeing whether
she'll be guesting with you on television in this show.
Yes, that's right. That's right. There's a couple I get to do my talk show. It's fun. It's actually kind of like this, except it's on a news set. But it's I get to talk to Juliana, also Chris Noth, who plays the governor on the show. I get to interview him.
Will you have off-television scenes?
I will have off-television scenes and lots of nudity. No.
You won 4 Emmys for your role as Dr. Crane. You were nominated 11 times, and I still watch that show.
Well, that's great.
Why did that work so well? The 2 leads were great, and the father was great. But
yes, it had everything. It had, first and foremost, it had great writing. It had really smart, deeply funny, and very heartfelt writing. And that's what makes a show not only popular, but it also gives a show the legs to last that long, because it's multidimensional, and it was right from the beginning. And it was really well cast. And I don't just mean us, the core group, but all through the years. This is another example, by the way, of the guest stars on our show were all of Broadway. James Earl Jones, guest starred, and Dana Ivey, and on and on and on. Wendy Malick, and we had it wasn't stunt casting; it was really fine actors. So I think that. And the other thing that makes it last is that the writing, aside from being really good, it wasn't a lot of topical references. It wasn't all about something that just happened in the news the other day, or someone who's kind of famous in the moment. Because that's an easy place to go when you're writing a comedy. And it's funny for 5 minutes, and then you see it 10 years later and you don't even know what they're talking about. They never really did that.
You think they were aware of that?
I do. I don't think they were thinking we're writing for posterity, but I think it was part of the aesthetic of the show that the episodes were written like plays, like, you know, half-hour play every week, and we did it in front of a live audience. And I just think they were writing them in that way, and that was part of the style.
What took you to directing?
For a long time, people have said to me that I should direct, and I never wanted to. When we were doing Frasier, one of our camera people, Patty, said to me early on in the series, "You should direct." And it was something about the way I saw the show, or the way, I don't know. I actually followed Jimmy Burrows, one of the great directors of television. He directed the first few years of our show. He directed all of Friends. He was directed on Cheers, everything. And when Friends was starting up, which I think was our second year, I followed him on an episode with the idea of maybe directing, and I just hated it. Because I wanted to be out there getting the laughs. I didn't want to be, stand around saying, "Camera 2." So, and that was true for a long time. And then what happened was, about 3 or 4 years ago now, my husband Brian had written a musical and called It Should Have Been You. And it was being done, hadn't been cast yet, we didn't have any stars, and there was a very famous director who was going to direct it, and he had to drop out. And so they were looking for a director, and I was familiar with the show, and I really loved it. And I said to him, I'm not a director, but I'm kind of a name, so I'd be willing to give it a shot. And the producer said, fine. And we did it. We cast it. Tyne Daly was in it, Harriet Harris, and a bunch of people. And we did it out of the George Street Playhouse in New Brunswick. And it was a huge hit. And the great thing was, I had no idea that to direct an original musical as the first thing you ever direct is like the stupidest thing you could possibly do, because it's the most complicated directorial job. But I didn't know that, so I just did it. And I had a good time.
When's it opening? And
now we're bringing it to Broadway this coming spring.
And your husband wrote it?
Brian, yes, wrote the book and most of the lyrics. And
did he write before that?
Yeah, Brian was a writer. When we met years ago, he was an actor. And he always wanted to write for television. And the whole reason I ended up going out to LA at all to look at television was that he wanted to be a writer out there. And he wrote on a few shows, Caroline in the City and Dave's World. And then he and his writing partner created this show called Titus with this stand-up comic, Christopher Titus. And it was on Fox for 3 or 4 years. It was a big hit, very dark, funny comedy. Stacy Keach was on it. And so he did that. And then when Frasier ended, when Titus ended, we both sort of headed back to New York. And I started working in the theater, which is what I've been doing ever since. And he started writing musicals.
We'll be right back with David Hyde Pierce, and we're going to talk about a subject close to his heart, the subject of Alzheimer's. Don't go away. We're back with David Hyde Pierce, and he's going to appear in The Good Wife. The first episode will be
November 2nd.
And he's going to direct. It could happen.
It should have been you.
Should have been you.
Yeah.
Coming next spring on Broadway. I will be there.
Good.
Early.
We'll get you an opening night.
You have been always active in the fight against Alzheimer's because it hit the family, right?
Yeah, it hit my family, several times. My grandfather, my mom's dad, had Alzheimer's, and then my own dad developed dementia late in life that was probably a combination of what they call vascular dementia and Alzheimer's. So, yeah.
It's the disease that's tougher on the family, right?
It's the people who take care of someone with Alzheimer's, unlike other diseases. It's look, you've got cancer, you've got whatever. It takes a terrible toll on your loved ones and on
the caregiver.
Yeah, But there's something else with any kind of dementia, because the person is not only dying, in this case, Alzheimer's is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States right now. People forget that it's a terminal illness. But while they're going, they're also disappearing. And they're losing their ability to make decisions, to do rational things. And as someone who is taking care of that person, you're confronted with, annoyances, the same question over and over, a person who might become dangerous to you or to themselves, a person who might wander and get lost, a person who needs constant supervision, a person who can't be left alone for a second for 24 hours. And on top of all of this, this is frequently someone you love. And you have to find new ways of relating to each other.
I've spent lots of times with Nancy Reagan.
Uh-huh.
And her husband didn't talk last year and a half.
Yeah.
Just didn't talk. But he never was angry. A lot of them get angry, right?
Yeah. Well, you never know. That's the thing. And what's complicated about it, too, is the old expression is if you've seen one Alzheimer's patient, you've seen one Alzheimer's patient. Because it's the brain. It's the most complicated thing we have. And the way the disease works its way through the brain and how your brain responds is completely unpredictable. And frequently, people will behave in ways that seem so uncharacteristic. A very mild-mannered woman will suddenly start cursing like a sailor. And people sometimes think, oh, wow, is this the real them coming out? And it's like, no, it's a short circuit. It's a missed connection. It's a malfunction.
And you're with the Alzheimer's Association, you're very involved. Is any progress being made at all?
Yes. I mean, there's two answers to that. Yes, progress is being made, and no, not enough progress is being made.
What's the progress?
Well, look, research goes on, but funding for research relative to the scope of the disease, relative to how much it costs the country, relative to how many people are dying of it, it's woefully underfunded.
Because it's old people?
I think that's part of it. I mean, what's happening now is because, the baby boom generation is so enormous, and we're all turning 65, and although there are people in their 40s who get Alzheimer's, the vast majority of people who get it are 65 and older. So things are starting to turn around too slowly because there's a huge majority of people who have a big stake in this and are starting to really talk to their congresspeople and senators. But you know what it reminds me of is climate change, which is when you look at climate change, you think, well, what's the big deal? It's really just the end of the world. It's the death of every single person on the planet. But Ebola is happening now, and of course, which is a horrifying disease, but because it's an immediate catchword that sends panic into everyone, it's in the news every single day, and countries are assembling to try to contain this disease. And that's the stealth and brilliance of Alzheimer's, which is it just keeps going quietly, taking more and more people.
Doesn't happen overnight, right?
That's right. But the people who've been through it, the reason I'm involved is I think all of us who've been touched by the disease not only know how tough it is, but also feel an obligation to get the word out.
When you die of it, what do you die of?
Well, if you actually die of Alzheimer's disease or a dementia like Alzheimer's, what it means is it's worked its way through your brain, progressively shutting down. It starts with higher function like memory. You can become disoriented, you lose your ability eventually to control your body functions. And if it goes all the way, then your brain loses its ability to control swallowing and breathing. Many people pass away from some other condition before that point. And one of the things that's heartbreaking about the lack of money for research is there's a National Alzheimer's Project Act that the President and the Congress unanimously passed a few years ago, which is astounding. We forget that could ever happen, but it did. They have a goal of finding some kind of very effective treatment or a cure by 2025, which would be amazing. If we can even slow it down, if we can even find a way to slow down the progression of the disease so that people die before it gets beyond mild memory loss, then we will alleviate a whole lot of suffering and eliminate a huge cost.
Aren't there drugs that slow it down?
No. There are drugs that can slow down the symptoms and give you a little extra time, but they are not consistent. They don't work for everyone. And what we really need is something that attacks the underlying disease.
Finally, on that subject, would you want to, by the way, since your grandfather had it and your father had it, are you subjected to it, do you think?
There are genetic components to the disease. You can have family members with it and not get it. There's a very rare form of the disease that's genetic and gives you a 50% chance of getting it. But that's rarer, and that's where multiple siblings in a family will have it. But your chances, if you have family members, your chances do go up slightly.
Would you want to know you have it?
Yeah. I think that, I don't need to know right now because I'm not experiencing symptoms other than the normal kind of memory loss that comes with my age. I'm 55. But I definitely believe that early diagnosis is vital because it gives you the chance to make decisions while you still can. It gives you and your family a chance to do stuff that you may still want to do together. You can enroll in clinical trials and maybe be part of discovering a treatment. There's so many reasons. And here's the thing I want to say about it too. What makes my job of being sort of a spokesperson difficult is on the one hand, I want people to know how scary this is so they'll do something about it. But on the other hand, I don't want people to be so scared of it that they just don't do anything about it and say, I don't want to know about it. I don't want to. Somewhere there's a balance because we've found great ways to take care of people and to take care of the people taking care of people. And we're getting better and better at that.
We'll be right back with David Hyde Pierce. Don't go away. We're back with David Hyde Pierce. He's directing on Broadway next spring. He will appear in The Good Wife starting in November. You'll be seeing him regularly, although he doesn't know what happens to him on the show. They could shoot you in the third episode.
I have no idea, yeah.
Tell me about how fast it seems gay marriage has suddenly become favored in the nation in so quick a time, faster than civil rights.
It reminds me when Holland Taylor won the Emmy. Holland Taylor had been acting for years, Broadway and off-Broadway, and finally she was playing a judge on something, I can't remember what. And she got up and she said, overnight, because she had just become well-known through television. It was like, oh, it happened like that. Well, of course, it's a lot of centuries of gay and lesbian people being persecuted and murdered and, disenfranchised and all that. So it seems like...
by the public, though.
Yeah, but all of that, there's been a long, long history of these people living, being part of our lives and no one talking about it. And it was all fine until you started talking about it. I am amazed once of the sort of domino effect with same-sex marriage happening throughout the states, but I think it had to do with visibility, all the brave people who, fought for marriage, and just the average American looking at these people or looking at, friends or family who are gay or lesbian and realizing, it's kind of hypocritical to say, oh, I love you dearly, you're my best friend. Would I let you marry the person you love? Well, sorry, no. And those conversations used to happen a lot, and they happen less and less now because it just seems more important to let people live their lives. It seems, in a way, more American.
Were you amazed when the Pope said, live and let live, almost?
I almost became a Catholic. Just because it was such any hierarchical, any big institution like that, whether it's the government or the Catholic Church or whoever, that reveals a bit of humanity is so exciting because, they have their obligations of traditions and the ship of state or the history of the church and all that stuff. And when one person is brave enough to say, yeah, but you know what? Think about what we've all actually been experiencing in life, and let's shed a little light on this and see if we can all make a change.
Was it hard to come out?
It wasn't hard. I just had to do it so many times. Because really, there's no such thing.
What do you mean?
Well, so when did I first? I told my sister. She already knew, and talking to my family, they were fine. Then, going into the business, I never really hid like my relationship with Brian, but I also kind of felt like, I really am resisting the pressure to make announcements about my private life. The whole point of sort of having a private life is being private. So every time you got a new job, that meant new people found out that you're gay and that this is your partner. So that's kind of coming out. Over the years, the speed bump felt less and less and less. But what really happened was there was a point where when I was coming to New York, after having been in LA, and I was coming to New York to do theater again, and I thought, I can't do this anymore, and I want to be explicit. I don't want to hide, but I don't want to do it on the terms of, being on a magazine cover. That's fine for some people. It wasn't what I wanted to do. So I ended up doing it in an interview, an AP interview, where I just talked about why I went out to LA. And I happened to mention I went out because my partner, Brian, wanted to be a writer, which I mentioned here today. And that was all I had to say. And then there was a reaction. Either people said, how great that he said that, or people said, well, it's about time. Or people said, why do we have to hear about this? So you can't win. So that's why I say you keep coming out, you keep telling people who didn't know. And where we are now, which is bliss, is no one cares.
That's what the amazing thing has happened, is no one cares.
No one cares, and people get to live their lives.
Do you think religion will change?
I think it is changing. Some religions are changing. Obviously, some religions are, executing people. So we're all on different timelines. But, yeah.
What was it like to get married?
It was great. Brian and I, we talked about it. We'd been together for about 25 years at that point. So we didn't want to have a big wedding. And what we ended up doing was we were in our house in LA. It was him and me, our 2 dogs, and our dear friend, John Cooper, who runs Sundance now, he and his partner. And Cooper had gotten a license online to be able to marry straight friends of his years ago, so he was able to marry us. And so we just did it quietly like that. And what was interesting to me, it was lovely, it was fantastic. But when the word got out, it got reported in 2 different ways. Some people said, oh, they had a private ceremony, and some people had said, oh, they had a secret ceremony. So once again, it was like either it was, oh, a private, or it was, oh, well, they're still trying to keep it a secret and hide it. So again, it's a lesson that you just have to do what you're going to do. And
any thoughts about a child?
I love visiting other people's children.
Do you like the way Modern Family handles it?
Yes, I think Modern Family is a great show. I'm prejudiced. I have friends, Chris Lloyd, who was one of the great Frasier writers, runs Modern Family, and we have a few Frasier writers on that. So I can't be unbiased about that show, but I love it and it makes me laugh.
We'll be back with more. We'll have some social media questions for the wonderful David Hyde Pierce right after this. We're back with David Hyde Pierce. We have a couple of social media questions. Okay. Bryson Knox on Facebook. Any chance of a Frasier reunion?
No, Bryce, sorry. I don't think so. We had a reunion, sort of, just privately. I was in LA in January directing a show, and so a bunch of us, we all got together. John Mahoney wasn't there. He was in Chicago, but it was Kelsey, Perry Gilpin, Jane Leaves, some of the writers. Whenever I'm out there or whenever they're in New York, we get together. But I don't think we're going to do an actual TV show or anything.
Jeanette Rodriguez asks, how much of your own personality did you put into Niles?
It's a good question, Jeanette. I'm actually, I learned a lot from Niles. I'm basically a slob, and he dressed very nicely, thanks to Audrey Bamsmer, our costume designer. I didn't know anything about wine, but Niles knew a lot about wine. I didn't go to the opera, but John Mahoney, who played the sort of blue-collar dad on Frasier, was a huge opera fanatic, and when I'd visit him in Chicago, he'd take me to the Chicago Lyric.
Opposite of the part he played.
Exactly. So there's always a part of you in it. I can pretty much say that the main part is that I love my family, and I think Niles loved his family too, and I think that was the thing that we both shared. Peter
Morrissey, too, tweets, how is it working on the set of the smartest show on television?
You mean the Larry King Show? Is he talking? I wonder if he's talking about Frasier or The Good Wife. Well, either way.
Frasier, yeah, because The Good Wife hasn't started. I'm sure it's some of.
It's a lot of fun. You know why it's fun? I'll tell you why it's fun. Because on shoot night, when we were in front of a live audience, by the time we had gone through a week of rehearsal and a week of rewrites, the show was ready. Some shows, the author, you're in the middle of the shoot and the writers are saying, well, the second act doesn't work, what do we do? It never happened on our show. They had late nights and early mornings to make it, to get it in shape, but it was so carefully structured and written that by the time we were shooting in front of the audience, we were ready to go, and it really was like doing a play.
Now, he came from Cheers. Where did you come from?
I have no idea. I was doing theater. I started out on Broadway and off Broadway when I got out of college. I was here.
You auditioned for that part?
No, what happened was the creators of the show had seen me in the Heidi Chronicles on Broadway a few years before, and I'd gone out to LA and I did a bit on a show that didn't run very long called The Powers That Be. It was a Norman Lear political satire, and John Forsythe was in it, Holland Taylor was in it. I played a suicidal congressman. And they saw that, and the casting director said to them, when they were creating Frasier, they said, if you ever want to have a brother, this guy looks like Kelsey. And so I just went and met with them, and we talked for a while, and they gave me the part.
We now play a game of If You Only Knew. I just throw questions at you.
Okay, I'll wait here.
Favorite book?
Favorite book? Well, these are hard. What's my favorite book? That's so hard. Well, I'm reading The Brothers Karamazov now, and I'm liking it, but I don't think it's my...
Mine was Catcher in the Rye was mine.
Catcher in the Rye is your favorite.
Least favorite food?
Oh, The Lord of the Rings is my favorite book. I read that as a young teen, and that was...
Least favorite food?
Uni. It's that glop. You go to the sushi restaurant, and it's sea urchin. Oh. And I'm getting used to it, but not yet.
What would you like the chance to do over in your life?
Nothing.
Do you have a bucket list?
Oh, no. I don't think ahead very much.
Biggest splurge?
I bought an organ.
You play the organ?
No, a kidney. No, I bought an organ. It was, I played the organ.
Get into it well, good.
I had an organ. We had an organ in our house in L.A., and then when we sold the house, we donated the organ to a church. But yeah, that was a big splurge.
Remember the best advice you ever received?
The best advice, God. These are hard. It's, picking one thing. I had a pal, Edward Herman, great actor, who I was working with in summer theater, and I was going to go to drama school after college, and he said to me, before you spend any more time and money going to school, why don't you go to New York and see if you really want to do this? And that's what I did, and I came to New York, and my first job was a Broadway show, and I stayed. So that was pretty good advice.
If you were stranded on a desert island, what 3 things would you want with you?
Brian and the dogs.
If you weren't an actor or a director, what do you think you'd do?
Gosh, go slowly crazy.
Biggest misconception people have about you?
That I'm George Clooney.
If you had a superpower, what would it be?
To grow hair.
Pet peeve?
Pet peeve.
What bugs you?
Yeah, I think it's still, I'm going to say, texting in the restaurant, like being with someone in the restaurant and texting and not have a conversation, right?
I hate that.
You know why? Because we're so old. That's why.
If you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be?
Oh. I would love to have dinner with Beethoven because it wouldn't matter how loud the restaurant was.
David, great, always great.
Thanks, Larry. So good to see you again. Thanks.
David Hyde Pierce, you're going to see him in November on The Good Wife, coming to Broadway, directing next year. What's the name of the show again?
It Should Have Been You.
It Should Have Been You. Look for that. Look for him everywhere. He's one of the great people in theater and film and television. See you next time.